All right, thank you very much. So, as Pastor Walter was just saying, I was asked to come up and talk a little bit about getting out of your comfort zone. And one of the things that I wanted to hit on first, and it's a little story, and I think it'll kind of strike a chord with you because I believe most of you will have found yourself in this position before, and it's going to lend itself well to what we're going to talk about through the rest of the evening. And so this is actually a personal story, and it's not that just kind of a small, quick aside, but it's from earlier this week. I found myself at work, and I had a deadline coming up for a pretty big project. So I'm assuming most people can relate to that position, whether it's at school or work. You've got this big deadline coming up. You've got something that you've got to get done. And I remember sitting there in my office and just kind of grinding away. And you just start looking at the clock and it just keeps ticking. There's nothing I can do about it. The clock just keeps moving. There's no way I can pause it. There's no way I can stop it. I can't go back in time. I cannot give myself any more time. And I think, the key that I want to hit on there is time and how finite it is and how precious it is. It's not something that we can go out and acquire more of in any way. We're dealt what we're dealt. And so how are you going to handle your time? What are you going to do with your time? And what time are you going to give to the Lord? And so this evening I'm going to open up real quick. And so I'm opening up here to Matthew chapter 25. And it's a verse that's meant a lot to me that perhaps when I first interpreted it a little bit different than most people, but it's always been something that I go back to when I'm thinking about mission work. And it's Matthew 25, verses 14. It's the parable of the talents. And so I'm sure most of you are familiar with this story. It's talking about the master who is going to go on a journey, and he has the 3 servants, and he gives to the first servant 5 talents, and then he gives to his second servant 2 talents, and finally to the third servant he gives him 1 talent. And then the master goes away, and then he comes back after his journey, and he's checking back in with his servants, and the first servant comes back to him and says, look, I went out, I invested these 5 talents, and I've got a return of 5 more talents. He's able to give that to the master. And then you have the second who did the same thing. He went out, invested his 2, returned 4, and then finally gets to the third. And the third servant has taken his talent, and he went out and he buried it, and he did nothing with it. And so for me, when I think about mission work, I think about, it's one of the talents that I've been given, not in the sense that, hey, I'm great at going out and doing mission work. The talent is having the time. That's the talent that I recognize that I have. I have the time. And so what am I doing with my time? Am I just going to bury it? Am I just going to go sit on my couch and be comfortable and say, you know what, I'm going to church every Sunday. I've accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. And now I'm going to go play golf after church, and I'm just going to, I'm going to go along and enjoy my life. And I'm just going to wait for the master to return because, we've all got that deadline in front of us where we get to stand before the master. So, when you get there, what are you going to be able to tell him that you did with your time? It's precious. So I know that I don't want to be there standing before the Lord and say, I sat on it. I went out and I buried it. I want to be able to demonstrate that, you gave me this commission to go out to the ends of the world, to go out and be a disciple for you, to make more disciples. And I know that I want to be able to come up and say, I feel like I've done that. I've taken what you've given me, and I've made my best attempts to multiply that in your name. And so, I think one of the other reasons they'd asked me to come and speak tonight is because I've been to Haiti several times. I've been to Jamaica. I've been on several mission trips. And to touch a little bit about that and how, just getting out of your comfort zone. Well, for me and for many of you, I'm sure, I've got, I work, obviously. I have a family. I have a wife, and I have a young daughter. I have a business that I try to run, and so time it seems even more finite, particularly as I've gotten older. Some of my earlier mission trips I did while I was in school, and I thought I was busy then. And now you throw kids and a family in the mix, and you realize what busy really is. And so how do I get this to happen? How do I set aside this time? And I found the way that it works for me is I just put it on my calendar. It doesn't matter what else is there. I'll put it on my calendar. I'll talk to somebody. We'll get the other stuff moved, and starts there. And it's been incredible because every time it finds a way of working itself out. If I've got conflicts, You know what? I'll call on somebody. Hey, can you cover this case for me? Can you cover this meeting for me? Sure, yeah, I had a cancellation. It opened up. I'll be there. I think you'll find that when you are truly walking on the path that Christ has set out for you, the impediments that seem so big will become so small. They'll move right out of the way. But it all starts with just taking that first step. And that was, the first trip that I went to Haiti was in the midst of, I think my daughter was 4 months old at the time. So I was excited at the prospect of getting some sleep somewhere else. But again, it's busy. And so, you know what? I sat down, I talked to my wife. I said, hey, listen, I feel like God's calling me to go do this. She supported me. And that's half the battle, is having a good support system. She supported me, and we put it on the calendar and got the plane tickets, and it worked out. And the other thing that led to that was somebody asked me. I've gotten continually better about seeking it out. But sometimes it's as simple as saying yes. It doesn't have to always be some giant overt act that you are just, I've got to fly out to the Philippines tomorrow. It's a 24-hour flight and this and that. Sometimes it can be as simple as going down the street to the St. Gerard house or the St. Francis house. We've got so many wonderful opportunities here locally and abroad. And, the church is partnered with so many great organizations. So, I can't find it's not an excuse. I can't make time. I mean, that excuse is hopefully kind of fading away for you. And you can start thinking about ways to just make it happen. And so, if any of you have been to Haiti, I don't need to explain how out of a normal American comfort zone that is. I mean, you want to talk about third world, that's it. That's the place you go to see a whole different lifestyle. And the scary part is you're there in 2 hours, a 2-hour flight from Fort Lauderdale, which is just mind-boggling, that there's a whole world going on somewhere else, and there's all these lives somewhere else that are so completely different than ours, and it's 2 hours away. I mean, so there's so much opportunity out there, and I would just encourage you, and kind of what I want to leave you with tonight is to just think about that third servant and, what he did. He just buried that talent that he had. Don't let your time be a talent that you're sitting on. Don't get comfortable. We weren't called to be passive followers of Christ. We're called to go out and to be active followers of Christ. And so now I'm going to do...
All right. The last time I spoke up here was at Youth Weekend, my senior year of high school. I know a lot of you are saying so, last year. No, it's been a little while. It's been a little over 10 years now, shockingly to me. But everything I'm about to talk about today was just starting at that time. I didn't know that any of this was going to happen. And so it's a very faithful testimony of what the Lord can do in your life. The story starts out with, right after I got done with Youth Weekend, I was talking to Greg West, who's normally in the service. Greg, are you here? No? Okay. No, he's here? There he is. Hey, Greg. I should have known to look over there. You've been sitting there for about 10 years now. Greg told me that there was a group going to the Philippines out of Jacksonville. It was the Tebows, and that I should maybe go talk to them because he's heard the Lord's doing great things there. And so I really don't know why, but I decided that I would go talk to them. And at that time, I'd never done any overseas mission work or anything like that, but I ended up signing up, and a few months later, I was in the Philippines. The topic today is getting out of your comfort zone, so I'll kind of describe the situation I found myself in the first week there. We had flown from Jacksonville to Chicago, and then from Chicago, Nagoya, Japan, from Nagoya, Japan to Manila, which is the capital of the Philippines. And then we had taken another couple-hour flight from Manila to a remote part of the Philippines. Once we got in that remote part, we took about a 2 or 3 hour bus ride to get to a hotel where we spent the night. We woke up that next morning. It was about 3 a.m. in the morning, and there were Army Jeeps there that had been left over after the war. And myself and a translator got into one of those Army Jeeps, so we're already... describe how far we are out. We got in one of those Army Jeeps, and then we drove for about 3 hours into the mountains. And we finally came to this lake that we had to cross. And the only way to cross it was a bamboo raft. There was a guy on the raft with a pole, and he poled you across the lake. Now, keep in mind, by the time we got there, we really didn't see anybody from the time we left the hotel to when we got to the lake. So we were really at the ends of the earth. And so we're going across the lake in the raft, and that's when it kind of hit me, what am I doing here? I had no idea. I knew I was in the Philippines, but apart from that, really no idea where I was within the Philippines. But I was definitely out of my comfort zone. No idea what I had in store, but the Lord definitely had something in store. We ended up landing the raft and walking a little bit further through the woods, and we came out to a tribe in the middle of the Philippines. They actually look different than normal Filipinos. It's indigenous tribes in the Philippines that I've never left, never associated with society, and they'd also never seen white people before. And they don't have hair on their arms, so the first thing I remember is they all came up and wanted to touch my arm and thought it was so weird that I had hair on my arm. But anyway, they all ended up praying to accept Christ that day through the translator. And it was just amazing to see what the Lord had in store. And I had no idea at the time, when he first used Greg to ask me to go, I had no idea what was going to happen. And I ended up going to the Philippines years after that. And through that experience, we also got involved with an orphanage in the Philippines. And at that orphanage was a little boy named Carlos. Carlos was there because as an infant, his parents were going down a mountain in the Philippines and their brakes went out. And they threw Carlos out the window as they were going over the edge. And they reconstructed that after the fact. They figured that's the only thing that could happen because Carlos was left there crying on the edge and the Jeep was down in the valley. So I got to form a bond with Carlos and just learn what it meant to serve the Lord through serving others. I later found in Mark 9, it's talking about Jesus, and it says, Jesus took a little child whom he placed among them. Taking the child in his arms, he said to them, whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. What a blessing and an honor it is to be able to serve the Lord through working in children. The Lord was preparing me at that time, and I didn't know it, and this is one of the primary purposes of the message, that you never know what the Lord's preparing you for, but through getting to know Carlos and going to that orphanage, the Lord just opened my heart and it just made me love the kids there and love working with kids. Fast forward about 5 years ahead, we had been working with Peter and Shay Fontana in Haiti. Peter and Shay started an orphanage in Haiti. We have about 35 kids there now. They started about 20 years ago. And to my shock, one day they asked my wife and I if we would be interested in taking over running and facilitating the orphanage when they're ready to step down. At this point, since then, we've prayed about it, and we feel like the Lord has called us to it. And it's really cool, though, to see the way that just through the simple saying yes to the Lord prior, he has prepared us for the time to work in the orphanage. I would encourage all of you, whether it's here locally or internationally, to get involved serving the Lord in those capacities and serving others, because you never know what he's going to do. And you don't have to have any special skills. The one story I love to tell about Haiti is there's a little girl there named Beverly. Beverly is a troublemaker. It's the best way to describe her. But no matter what I'm doing at the orphanage, where I go, or if I'm playing with somebody else, she just wants to stand beside me and hug me. And so I'll keep one arm around her while she's hugging me, and then, throw a ball with another kid or do something else. But, all you have to do is just make yourself available. Just be there, even if it's just to show a small child that you love them, and the Lord can use you through that. So I'd encourage all of you to seek missions and to get further involved in serving the Lord, because it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever experienced. I think
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Real Life, Real Hope. I'm Walter West, lead pastor of Anastasia Baptist Church. And our mission as a church is to help people embrace the life-changing truth of Jesus Christ. And that includes you. Christ has a purpose for your life. He has a mission for your life. He wants you to be reconciled with himself. He has a destiny for you. If you want to find out more about that destiny, I invite you to contact us. You can find Anastasia Baptist Church online at www.anastasiachurch.org. Or you can find us locally in the St. Augustine, Florida area. We'd love for you to come by and see us personally, or you can call us by telephone. It's area code 904-471-2166. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, God bless you.